about ourselves, our body is an ecosystem of, we have more bacterial cells on our body than human cells. So, I mean, we think we are humans, but we are more than that.
But this is the interesting thing, because I find permaculture a little bit intimidating as a concept.
Because actually permaculture is much, much easier than that and much more accessible. I believe permaculture is for everybody to learn, even kids.
Welcome to the Adda. I'm your host, Deepa Mirchandani. Whether a European Salon or an Indian Adda, the tradition to come together to chat over the issues of the day is an old one. In our modern lifestyles, however, it's hard to find spaces for nuanced conversations, genuine and inclusive dialogue, so we've created our own. Adda is the Hindi word for the place where people come together to deliberate, disagree, and move on better for the experience of having had the chance to do it. Back in 2020, we opened up a deliberately small online space for people to have messy conversations. The backdrop at the time was a global pandemic, institutional racism and collective hypocrisy showing up at the time of Black Lives Matter, sexual violence and dominant culture and power dynamics being called out, coupled with collective isolation, fear, and a growing cancel culture. Places to be open about the unknown and uncertainties and just not having all the answers didn't really exist. That's where the Adda started. Today, we continue to be a space where the topics affecting our world are brought to the fore and unpicked so that we can better understand them and ourselves. We come with a sense of curiosity, and that by exploring different perspectives, maybe we can grow and show up a little bit better in the world. We're believers that good conversations lead to better perspectives, and better perspectives undoubtedly lead to better decision-making and action. We're really pleased that you're here to be part of it. Today, I'm thrilled to be in conversation with Elyes Mkacher. Elyes is a regenerative farmer and holistic thinker, a permaculture designer and educator. He's the founder of Dar Emmima, a permaculture education centre based in Chebba, Tunisia. You'll find the link to Dar Emmima and Elyes' work in the show notes. In this conversation, he shares how his search for freedom led him to travel the world, and how by observing the fragility of our global cities, he discovered permaculture as a way of not only being self-sufficient, but as a way of living life and ultimately showing up for the collective good of society. Elyes shares of himself openly, which is truly magical, and I'm grateful of having had the chance to share space with him. I hope you enjoy our conversation. So welcome. Thank you so much for saying yes to sitting in our first Chai and Chat. What was really, really special for me was we had a first conversation, what feels like a few weeks ago. And it was like, I feel like I have so much to learn from you and about you, right? And then I've been watching these videos and digging deeper into permaculture. And so I'm really excited to kind of dig a little bit deeper with you today. But starting with your story and how you've what has led you to doing the work that you're doing today. Because I think the backstory is actually really, really fascinating. And I have loads of questions. But in your own words, welcome. And let's start with you and how you got here.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. So how did I land here? You mean in the regenerative movement, in the permaculture?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can share that maybe when I was a student in university, I was dreaming of, having a big career, working in multinationals and making a lot of money. And I was in a completely different dimension where most people are, I guess, today. I come from country we call today Tunisia, where there was a revolution happening in 2011. And in that revolution, I could sense that how a small amount of people can make a big change, can make earthquake kind of change. Because I was there in 2011 in a protest in the city center, and we were about 40,000 people. That's not a lot. But still, that day, the president freaked out and ran away. And that provoked what we call a revolution that spread around in many Arab countries, and even inspired the Occupy movement in the US. And so it has a big impact in the world. And I realized that, okay, actually, a small group of people can provoke change. And I got really interested in change. And I started working in human rights NGO while finishing my university studies. And also I realized that I don't want to have a job where I work like 8 hours a day. That's what I didn't want to sign any contract. And I started realizing that I'm obsessed with the idea of freedom. So I really wanted to feel free. And so I decided to travel. And after I finished university, I took a one-way ticket to India. And I kept traveling for 3 years.
And this is what I was really interested, obviously, for me. Like, a one-way ticket to India is like the dream. But what made you go to India of all places?
Actually, I had friends there that invited me many times. And so they encouraged me to go. And also India because, it's easy to travel there. There is so much to learn from the people there. And also the challenge for me was in this travel is to travel with as little money as possible. And I learned that in India there are people living with $1 a day. So I wanted to learn how to do that. How can I live with $1 a day as a challenge? Like, as these people are not smarter than me, they are not stronger than me. I just need to observe and learn. And if I learn that, then I will be more free. I would be free of money. I would learn how to enjoy life better. And India, how to say, exceeded my expectations. Sorry, I need to mention that English is my third or fourth language, so sometimes I don't find words. But yeah, India exceeded my expectations in terms of learning, in terms of how people there are so humble and live together and very patient towards the other. And learn how to live happily with very little.
And how old were you when you decided to do this trip?
I was 26.
But it's full on, right? Like, it's quite a bold, like, to go traveling to different culture, different language, different, and actually, like, the similarities are probably greater than the differences. But on paper, India as a country is quite daunting. But at 26, to say I'm going to give myself this challenge, which you didn't necessarily need to do, right, is a really bold. It's really bold, right? And just that. And how did you, like, the link between freedom and that kind of monetary system, right? Where did that, like, those linkages and that tie come from?
Yeah, Yeah, the tie comes from when I felt the need to get a job, and the jobs available are not things that I would really enjoy, and I would have to sign a contract and become, for me, very often it sounds like modern slavery sometimes, especially with the fact that life costs is increasing every year. And I didn't find sense in spending my youth and my energy in accumulating money just to survive. So this quest of freedom, actually, I wanted to use my energy and my youth to learn. And for me, the best university to learn is traveling, is better than any book or any university. While traveling not as a tourist, but as a wanderer, as someone who just want to see different things, to meet new cultures, to try to understand others and oneself. Because when you are when you live without the use of money, it's more real, and you learn a lot about yourself, about your limits, about your capacities, your power as a simple human being. And so I wanted to explore that while and I'm happy I did it when I was young enough. I'm not sure again, but maybe. It was an opportunity for me because I didn't have any attachment. I didn't have a family. I didn't have. I had my parents, but they were autonomous. I'm grateful for that. And I wanted to take that opportunity. And the Tunisian passport luckily allows me to travel to some countries without visa. So India was, I didn't visa, but it was easy. And
So where was the first place that you landed?
I landed in Delhi airport and I took a bus to Chandigarh.
Wow, Punjab. Okay, straight to Chandigarh. And so talk about like that trip, because how long was that? Because there was a one-way ticket. So did you have an idea of how long you were going to be away, or was it let's see what happens?
Yeah, I didn't have an idea. I just knew that I will be in India for 6 months. Because that's what the visa allowed me.
And then from India, in terms of your experience, because I listened to your TEDx talk, and you tell a story in that about how you were walking, and then you saw somebody with a bicycle, right? And had a whole family and the next door neighbors in the cart behind them. And there was something really powerful where you said, I didn't have the right to complain. And so could you talk about like those kinds of experiences that you had along the way and then where you went next?
Yeah, I had many experiences that changed my perception of the privilege, what's privilege, and how privilege is actually a responsibility. So I had the privilege of being healthy, so it's my responsibility to keep that health. I had the privilege to have, a functioning body, and so I had to use it to do the right things and to take care of it. And I saw many people who are unprivileged, but still they value very much whatever privilege they have, and that's what makes things more valuable, is to see how we can use them best and how to be grateful for whatever privilege we have.
And was that from like that kind of realization? Was that from like seeing it in a kind of and the experiencing, or were those seeds sown kind of in childhood with family values? religion, or was it something that maybe at 26 you may have taken for granted a little bit? But also bearing in mind the kind of political situation that you grew up with.
Yeah. Actually, I grew up in what I consider a very stable situation, stable family, stable society, stable political situation also. And I didn't have much maybe concern or awareness of many things. But when I traveled to India, I could see, I had many experiences that changed me. And I keep changing. I mean, I keep learning. But they changed me a lot. Like you mentioned this morning when I saw this old man driving the bicycle rickshaw with maybe 10 or 12 kids, and he was smiling and very looks happy and nice to others. And also when I went to the Kumbh Mela is the greatest pilgrimage in the world. And it happens every 3 years, but the one where I was happens every 144 years, Maha Kumbh Mela. And there were like 200 million people, I think, go there. And there was one day where I was there were 30 million people in one place. 30 million people is 3 times the population of my country. And they were all there in the same place. And I couldn't see any violence. I couldn't see... I saw only people smiling, excited, happy, sharing meals, sleeping together on the ground, treated equally and very calm, and that was deeply inspiring for me. And they didn't ask me for any visa or what's my religion or to go there. And I had 3 meals with everybody, and I could observe the rituals and have conversations with the Babas and the Naga Sadhus and other travelers from all over the world. And these kind of experiences, deeply impact who I am today. And also the trips in the trains, because I was traveling in the clusters class with common people, very common people, and I saw how generous they are and how nice they are, and I could see also the difference between life in the city and life outside the city, how outside the city people are more peaceful and more authentic maybe, and more trustful. So I started to value the life close to nature, like how it's important to be close to nature to have a peaceful society.
And then what were you looking for next? Like where did you go next? And was it a different kind of experience that you was like, what were you searching for?
Yeah, I was searching for beauty, for authenticity, and for freedom. These are, I think, my main interests. Next I went to Sri Lanka, which is near, and I spent there a month traveling. Actually, a friend joined me there. And then, I went to Malaysia. I spent there 4 months. And then Thailand, about a month, and Cambodia, about a month, and then China, 2 months and a half. Yeah, and then I went back to Tunisia for a month, and then I went to Colombia, Brazil, Peru, and the United States.
And how are you, because the idea being you were going to be on $1 a day. And so how did that work out?
Well, in the beginning, I was actually had a budget of $100 a month, and if I'm able to save some of that $100, I can spend it the next month if I want, or I can keep it. And and I worked in India for 2 months in a kindergarten, and I earned I think $300. and I did the crowdfunding too. The end of the trip to buy a better camera. And in Malaysia, I worked as a photographer. And also, because I had my camera, I worked as a photographer for a students' organization called ISEC that had offices all around the world. So they started inviting me to film their conferences and also to film their activities and to film the cities. So every local committee, they invite me to film their cities so we can promote their cities for student exchange. And it was fun because I could stay in families and I could meet the authentic life there, how it is. So, I was jumping from one family to another. And at some point, they invited me, like ISEC in China invited me, and they paid my flight ticket and they get me visa. And then ISEC in Brazil, in Colombia, in Peru, in the United States, they all invited me. And sometimes they provide, transportation tickets and accommodation. And the rest of the money, I use it to eat, mostly.
And so then, in total, how long was your journey?
About 3 years.
Wow. And then you came back to Tunisia, a changed man, at 29.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yes.
And so then, what was the plan for coming back? Like, you didn't get tempted to stay in the jungle in Colombia, which I nearly never left, so...
Yeah, actually, at that time, the plan was to keep traveling in Australia and then in Europe and Africa and finish with the trip in Africa. But, in the middle, I changed my mind because of permaculture.
So where did the permaculture seed get sown?
Yeah.
For want of a better phrase.
Yeah. Permaculture seed started, I think, in the US when I was in New York, because at that time I was thinking about freedom and starting to sense the importance of living in the countryside and how cities are like not sustainable as they are today. And one night I was with a friend on a rooftop in Brooklyn, looking at the towers of Manhattan, and we were talking about like opportunities to have jobs in New York and so on. And I was telling him I don't want to live in such a city. It's too big and too fragile as a system, because if something happened, like a major crisis or something, shortage of, petrol or a war or such cities would become extremely dangerous. Like, the streets would be dark and elevators would stop working. And so I was drawing this scary picture of what such situation could be. And then he asked me, what do you think people should do or would do? And I said, people need to run to the countryside and find lots of lands and need to relearn how to grow food. And the sooner they do it, the better. And so he told me that I was thinking like the Thomas Jefferson was saying. Thomas Jefferson, and I didn't know who was Thomas Jefferson at that time, and he said it's one of the founding fathers of the USA. And his American dream was to have a population of self-sustainable farmers. And I loved this idea. I was like, wow, like this should be the real American dream. If everyone was self-sustainable first, and they could transmit this knowledge, from one generation to another and have the right skills and infrastructure to have everyone and every community have their self-sustainability. and then they would have time and freedom to do what they love. So they need to be first self-sustainable, then they can be teachers, they can be doctors, they can be singers, they can be whatever they want. And so I loved this idea, and I started researching about autonomy and self-sufficiency and how to build it. And that's how I learned about permaculture as one of the best ways to achieve self-sufficiency.
And I've been looking into this idea of enlightened self-interest, right? Since you shared the video with David Holgren, right? Because initially, when I think of the word self-sufficiency, I think of it as like super individualistic and super, I need to take care of me. Not in the way that you've just described it, in that if I can take care of me, then there's a role that I play in taking care of others. And it was really interesting to me that David talks about it as power, and he talks about it as being revolutionary, right? Because if you can grow your own veggies and sustain yourself, then you're not buying from the supermarket. You're not feeding into this kind of corporate structure. And if we all did that, then you chip away at that system.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's individualism as power for the collective, which kind of blew my mind, which I hadn't framed it in that way because maybe I'd just been really basic about it. In this, no, collective, let's do it together. And maybe it's harder, and that seems too big a challenge. So I'm really interested in this idea of like that seed of individuality and self-sufficiency, but the fact that you're looking at the towers in New York and thinking, hell no, I don't want a piece of that, right? Whereas others would look at that and think aspirationally, I want to be part of that. And as opposed to strength, you saw fragility in what it represented, which is such a different lens of looking at things. And is that and where, like, if you could talk a little bit more about this kind of, that fragility of that system and this enlightened self-interest piece, which doesn't feel like, it feels like those words seem more severe than they mean. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for me, much of the, what you call enlightenment, happened with the permaculture. I learned a lot, and many ideas that were in the back of my mind were very well designed and drawn in the permaculture approach. One of them is to put ourselves in context. And the context of humanity is that we live on a planet that is 4.8 billion years, and life emerged around 4.5 billion years, and life emerged about 3.8 billion years ago. And Homo sapiens, the oldest skeleton of Homo sapiens, I think is about 300,000 years old, which is nothing compared to the 3.8 billion years of life evolution and of shaping the world as we know it today. And so Homo sapiens emerged around 300,000 years ago. And they lived as hunter-gatherers for most of their history until about 10,000 years ago, when humans learned to do agriculture, which changed the way we eat and the way we live, and changed. It was a revolution. And then Another revolution, major one, would be the Industrial Revolution and the introduction of machines and fossil fuel and this kind of things that changed completely the way we live and changed it also the face of the earth dramatically. And then there is another revolution, the electronic revolution, like computers and internet and all these things. That is only 60 or 70 years old. And today, the way we live, my generation, most of us think that that's reality. The reality is to have a car, to watch TV, to build towers, and to go to supermarket, which is, when put in context, it's just arrived. It's a new experience. We are experimenting, and we know nothing about it, if it's sustainable or not, and we are having more and more proofs that this lifestyle we are making is completely unsustainable and degenerative, and that's scary for me. So that's why I like to question all these new concepts that humans have made in the last maybe 2 centuries, including individualism. Like in permaculture, actually we promote communities for all livings, because in nature it's very hard, almost impossible for any being to live isolated. Nature works in terms of ecosystems. So it's all our body is an ecosystem of we have more bacterial cells on our body than human cells. So I mean, we think we are humans, but we are more than that.
But this is the interesting thing, because I find permaculture a little bit intimidating as a concept, because it feels like I need to know about the bacteria. I need to know about the fungi, right? Like, so even at the weekend when I went to the Wildlife Photographer of the Year exhibition, and I was sending you pictures of slime and mold and this whole ecosystem, right? And I didn't think about bats as pollinators until I saw this beautiful photograph of a bat being a pollinator that actually a kid had captured, and it was absolutely beautiful. Or mussels, and the role of mussels in filtering water, all right, and getting rid of bacteria in the system. And I mean, those are just 2 of the vast series, 3, if I include my slime mold, in this massive ecosystem. And it feels like I need to know, in order to understand permaculture or to think of permaculture as a system, I need to know the details of composting, and I need to understand the earth systems and the interplay, and use words like mycelium and symbiotic and biomimicry in order to understand permaculture. And so it feels really daunting to me to take that on and do it properly, right? And with integrity, and then think, what's my role, right? Living in London, do I set up pots and start gardening and composting and all those things? And I've got friends who are very into fungi and composting and thinking about worms and all of these things, which feels a lot to me. And so how do you explain permaculture to a child or someone like me that has baseline knowledge that, oh, you put your leeks next to your carrot because the bugs cancel each other out and everything thrives? Which was my extent, that was my level of knowledge of permaculture before I sat down and started chatting to you, and you started sharing stuff for me to read, and I started learning. Because I can understand leeks go next to carrot, but then if I start thinking about pests and insects and microbes, it feels a lot. And so I find it a bit scary.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you for asking this question, because actually permaculture is much, much easier than that and much more accessible. I believe permaculture is for everybody to learn, even kids, and very easy to learn, because permaculture actually is not about information we need to collect, or it's about ethics and principle.
They made me feel better. When I started looking into the ethics and principles, it did seem like common sense. Like I agreed with all of it. And then I was like, but do I still need to know about the bugs?
Yeah, that's one principle of permaculture, which is observe and interact. And to observe is actually a skill that all indigenous people had, to observe the nature around them, how it works, the energies flowing, and try to learn about the plants and the animals and our body, and this is a skill that our generation have lost, and permaculture invite us to observe before doing any action, try to understand how nature functions, so we make a system that is energy efficient, so we don't waste energy and doing wrong things that we need to fix after. So, and this principle, open, it's unlimited, the knowledge that we can find. And for me, it's fascinating. And most of the knowledge that we learn through this principle, I believe we need to learn it very early. I mean, I wonder why we don't teach this in schools. That was in my first permaculture design course, I was in shock when I learned that sun rises in the east and sets on the west only 2 days a year. I always thought, okay, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and
no, and it's written in Shakespeare.
Yeah, but it happened only 2 days a year, in the equinox. The rest of the year, it rises in different places. And how comes I didn't know that? How comes we didn't learn this in school, we didn't, and how comes I don't realize that? And so many other insights that were mind-blowing for me, like why I didn't know this very simple and very practical information that everybody needs, and why I was taught, because I was learning in university, I was in engineering university, and I had this huge load of information that was completely useless for me. And I was overwhelmed, and I actually stopped my classes and moved to another, because I thought, okay, my so much stress and so much toxic environment, I would say, all this to become engineer, and then and I was seeing friends who are spend a lot of time working in university, and then they work in factories where they make one single-use spoons. So they're actually manufacturing trash, and that's a big pity, to spend all this energy in serving a system that is toxic to the planet and to the people. And so, and permaculture, when I say it's about principles and ethics, is, when you apply these ethics and principles the best that you can, in the way that you can, depending on the context where you are in and your capacity. And one of the principles is to, for example, start small and use slow solutions. So you can really start small wherever you are, at the depth I'd say, the step of your door. Another principle is to produce no waste. So you can do this whatever context. And actually, all the principles are universal. One of them is everything gardens, for example, as Bill Mollison framed it, where we learn that in nature, all beings are actually gardening. They are shaping their environment in a way that it becomes, propitious for life and for them. And the way they move seeds, they move rocks, they, for example, when they eat, and then in the waste you find the seed with the manure around it, and that allow trees to grow and to create new microenvironment for more life. And all animals and living beings are actually gardening, except for humans in the last few months, few centuries, that got themselves out of this dynamic and put themselves in a position where they want to control and to extract wealth from nature, which is our asset and the asset of all living beings. And so I believe we need to learn how to garden again. And when I see garden, it's not only about growing food. It's about being in harmony with nature and taking care of nature and taking care of ourselves. And and these are the permaculture ethics. They are three, very easy to remember: earth care, people care, and fair share. These are the main guidance. And also there is another primary guidance of Bill Mollison that says to take the responsibility. The only ethic, I don't know how he formalize it, but to take responsibility of our own existence and the existence of our children. So that's show the importance of to be autonomous. But autonomy doesn't mean autarcy. Autarcy is is to be isolated, and but autonomy is something that happens in community.
I found it really interesting reading the ethics, right? And there's so much being said, whether in the regenerative movement or in the social change space, about inner work, right? And you need to look after yourself in order to show up in the world, right? And that is the essence of people care. In lots of ways, right? It is that look after self, look after family, look after community. And I like the kind of collaboration, compassion, companionship as tenets of people care, which are all about the collective. It's all about being with others in that journey, and self-reliant, but about personal responsibility within that self-reliance. It's not this is mine or these are my people. It's you've got a collective responsibility to then show up for others, which is at the heart of it. So I found it made so much sense to me when I was looking into it. And like you said, the three ethics, it's about how we show up in the world at its most simplest. I don't know if you want to talk about share and fair share as well.
Yeah, I just want to mention that for me in the ethics, the word care is very important. And the care in English has many meanings. It means how to care about something, or how to care for something, and how to get interested into something. And so people care and earth care invite us to be interested in what earth is and how it functions and how natural systems functions. And people care is also invite us to be interested to learn how people function, how our body function, our mental and physical health, and how relationships happen, and how we can cooperate together, and the social aspect of life. And fair share touches maybe the economic aspect, and invite us to apply auto-regulation, like to limit our consumption, and to share the surplus. So in permaculture, one of the principles is to obtain a yield. So we don't do permaculture just for the sake of it. We do permaculture to obtain different yields. So the yield can be food, can be learning, can be fun, can be, and we try to stack yields, like to have as many yields as, and to create abundance of what humans need. So if humans need food, we need to create abundance of food. If humans need time, we need to have abundance of time and healthy relationships. And when we have abundant information, so the ethics of fair share invite us to create this abundance and then share the surplus with the other people and with the nature, with the rest of the living being. So that's what will allow us to continue as a species and in the future.
Because what I'm quite interested in this, right, is that it seems like the ethics and the principle are not new concepts, right? Like you said, indigenous communities, I don't like the word indigenous, so ancient communities around the world do live by these. And so it's almost like a call out to the West of what could be, and a reminding, or maybe not. It's not even a reminding, right? Because it may just be an exploration of ways things have been done, with that collective mindset, with that idea of nourishing and nurturing yourself by putting your hands in the soil, right, is an act of nurturing and nourishing everybody around you and the earth itself. So what do you think is the kind of the magic of the package and the framing of permaculture that has people super excited for the last few decades, that the kind of the ideas have been growing and seeding and growing around the world? And where does that kind of the stickiness of it feel more now than ever before?
Yeah, you mentioned the word package. Actually, one of my friends said that permaculture is a repackaging of indigenous knowledge, and I like that.
It is. But it is it's kind of...
Yeah, I agree with that.
And is that... And there's something, but there's the interesting thing about that, right, is that instinctively there's something a bit jarring about it. The idea of repackaging, right? And particularly now we live in a context of Western adoption of meditation or cultural appropriation of yoga, for example, right? And so part of me is these are all good things. The more people that do them, the better. But there is a part of recognizing from where things come and respect and honoring, right? Because we can joke about it as a repackaging of ancient wisdom, but there is something a little bit gross about it as well. Or it makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, for me, it is a repackaging of ancestral knowledge, but it also has in it a deep sense of, because now we have access to internet and we have access to much more information that humans could gather. For example, in biology, I heard one time someone saying that humans' knowledge in terms of biology doubles every 5 years. So we are learning so much. What we know, what we don't know is much, much bigger than what we know in terms of biology. And permaculture includes this knowledge and this awareness of how nature works at a planetary level, and that adds a lot to this indigenous knowledge, and I believe, and also many techniques that didn't exist before, a lot of low tech, and also many dimensions that were added. So,
So I think there's something graceful in the way that you talk about it, right? Because, and by graceful I mean like you show grace with it. There's evolution, right? There's tech, hi-fi. There's a hi-fi, lo-fi that you can have. And I think that's a beautiful way to put it, because it made me feel like, in my body, it made me feel a little bit nicer and calmer about it. But yeah, I think the evolutionary bit is, even though the principle, like the ethics of fundamentals, the way that the principles feel grounded, but they also feel quite modern and accessible. Or do you know what does that make sense? Like they feel doable for today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they are very doable. When I say start small, that's extremely more doable than that. It's very hard. When you will start small, start practicing, start observing, start being interested and I want to mention that to answer your previous question about how culture movement spread around the world. So the permaculture was co-originated by two people, Bill Mollison and David Holmgren. Bill Mollison was a professor, and David Holmgren was a student doing his thesis around permaculture. And Bill Mollison was a very strong, he was a good speaker, extrovert, and he wanted to take permaculture to the world. And he established a course, which is the Permaculture Design course, a 72 hours course, where he started teaching people from all over the world. And this course allows you to speak about permaculture, knowing what it really is, and also allows you to teach it forward. And that's how many of his students became teachers and started teaching it, permaculture, in other parts of the world. And that's what allowed permaculture to grow as a global movement. So, and this course, I believe, is for everyone. Like, everyone should and can do it, whatever environment you are in and whatever experience you have, because it's very, very well structured. You have an introduction, you have a part where we observe and try to learn how nature works, like about water cycle, about soil, about trees and plants, and energy transaction and energy efficiency, and the economic aspect and the social aspect of permaculture, and then and also the ethics and principles throughout the course. And at the end of the course, we learn how to do a design, the permaculture design. And the permaculture design, we can do it for a piece of land, or we can do it actually for anything, because everything is designed, everything you can think of. A laptop is designed. I don't know, a table is designed. The trees were designed. Our body is designed, to serve some functions. And there are good designs and bad designs. Design that are energy costly, and design that are energy efficient, for example. And permaculture teaches how, to design being inspired by nature, because nature has the most efficient design we can think of. The way the trees, they were designed to catch the solar energy and in a very efficient way, and to store it in a form of wood, for example, or soil, where it can become a habitat and is a store of chemical energy that creates abundance and create more life, and keeps the entropy on Earth low. And however, everything humans designed in the last maybe 2 centuries actually is mostly single use. It extracts resources and are consumed very quickly, and then produce trash. And that's very, this linear economy is very harmful, very degenerative, and it doesn't give us any perspective for the future, except for colonizing Mars, as Elon Musk is saying. That's the dream that they are selling us. But the dream in permaculture is to regenerate the place where we are, and together to regenerate Earth and build a permanent regenerative civilization for all humans. Yeah, to live in abundance and peace and love, and yeah.
Sounds so simple when you say it like that. Right? But going back to your story, right? Because you did your first... What year was it when you did your first permaculture course?
2016.
And so you're coming up to a decade of immersion. And your first course was in Tunisia.
Yeah.
And so what made you... So you had this idea, you were deep diving in New York and looking at... Well, finding permaculture as a concept, and then this package. Was it always your intention to go back and do it and work and have land in Tunisia?
That's actually not. I was thinking where I should settle, and I was thinking maybe I would never settle. I would keep moving forever, but. Actually, in New York, also, I had another experience I can share. Because I was living with the $100 a month, so I was eating very bad. Sometimes I'm invited, as photographer in some 5-star hotels and this kind of, and meetings and big corporations and conferences, and I could eat well. But most of the time I was eating very bad. I was eating like simple pasta with the small cube to add flavor, and drinking like Coke because it was cheaper than water. And so I was eating very bad. And one time, one of my roommates had a small bottle of olive oil. So I asked him if I could have a small spoon of that olive oil, because I come from a country where we drink, every day we drink olive oil and we have abundance of olive oil. And when I had that spoon, I felt like the vitamins, spreading in my body, and I felt like, wow, it regenerated. And, so that was a very powerful feeling that made me realize that actually where I grew up is paradise for me. We have all the ingredients of paradise there. We have olive oil, we have the beach, we have forests, we have Sahara, we have all kinds of landscapes, we have mountains, we have all kinds of fruit trees and animals and and peace also. I think it's peaceful. And we have one of the best climates, like we have 4 seasons, we have many sunny days. And so at that moment, I felt like, okay, at some point I need to live there. And then in the permaculture course, made me realize that actually the land where I am is a very degraded land, and it needs to be regenerated. And I have to use the available resources and to value the available resources. And my connection with the land and the fact that I have family here is a resource. So I needed to value that, to gain energy and time and be more efficient. Maybe if I started in another place, it would take longer and have a smaller impact. So I wanted to be close to my family also, to take care of them because they are growing old.
But this is also you going back to where you kind of started your story in your travels. It was recognizing your privilege, right?
Yes.
And it's that I have the privilege of this land, therefore it's a responsibility to honor and nurture it in some ways.
Yes. Actually, the main reason that made me, because now I live in my grandmother's house.
Mm-hmm.
And after the permaculture course, actually, I was so excited. I was looking to buy land, to sell my camera and buy land and just put a tent there and start. That's one of the effects of the permaculture design course. It can make you really excited. But then I had a workshop with a friend of mine, Brazilian friend. Her name is Carolina. And she, in her workshop, her workshop is called How to Run Projects with Available Resources. And in her workshop, I was asked to make a list of everything I own. And I had to squeeze my mind to, okay, I own a camera, I own a bicycle, I own a tent, I own, laptop, a pen, everything. I put it in a white piece of paper. And then the second question is I need to make a list of everything I don't own, but I can have access to. So I don't own, I don't have internet, but there is a place where I can get free internet. I don't have a car, but I have someone I can ask. Do you hear me? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ask to borrow me the camera or something. And in that exercise, I realized that I have, my grandmother's house was abundant and closed for 10 years, and it has a garden of 900 meters square, and it has a well, and it has a rainwater collection system, and it has like so many things, and it has a house that is already built. And we have some olive trees, heritage from my grandfathers, and I put that in the list, and I realized, okay, actually I don't need to buy land, and this land is abundant. Nobody is taking care of it, and I can go there and just start practicing, and maybe another day, if I have the means, I can buy my own land. Otherwise, I need to value these available resources and start practicing there. And that's how I ended in my grandmother's house.
Wow. And then what made you... So it started with this experiment, right? Of let's see what happens. And you're missing out the nice romantic story of your first permaculture course as well, right? There's a personal story in that as well, which we'll come to. But then this experiment has not just been an experiment; it's bloomed into an organization and you sharing your knowledge, right? But very specifically, targeting people in urban surroundings, right? So how did that go from... I love the idea from going from tent to actually I have access and abundant. So what was the first seed that got sown? Like, how did you start?
How did I start? What exactly?
Like just thinking about, like, you were like, I've got this land, I need to experiment. So what was the first planning, or how did you plan what you were about, like what you were going to do?
The plan was to observe, spend a year at least observing. That's one of the permaculture principles, to observe a land through the 4 seasons at least, and to observe also the society around and the interactions and myself, my capacities, my knowledge, and try to learn more, and also to practice, because in the first months I organized what I called a festival, where I invited people who were following me on Facebook to join for a week together. And we did like 3 sessions, and where everybody could do the things they like. So, and to help renovate the house and decorate the house and have a good time together while doing that. And it was very a great experience. And it gave me confidence also to host more people and to share the knowledge, because that's something I like doing. I like to share knowledge and to teach. And I am aware that not everybody like teaching. Bill Mollison said that from 400 students of permaculture courses, you get 1 teacher. Because not everybody likes teaching or feel comfortable teaching, and also not everybody has the means or the logistic to teach, and the capacity and the availability, and so that's why I decided to become, or to include, permaculture teaching in my livelihood. So it is more ethical and right for me. So I tried to practice that. I started hosting people in weekends, introduction to permaculture. And then I started the teaching permaculture design course in 2018. And and since then we had 8 courses here. And we had around 35 students that were certified in our Permaculture Education Center. And and right now, I mean, in my country, we are very few teaching permaculture. So I really want to give access to permaculture here, because when I wanted to do my first course, I was looking to do it in Australia or in Europe, and it was very expensive. But I was very lucky that year there was a teacher coming from Italy, and we had the course with him. But it didn't happen again since. And to have teachers coming from abroad is also expensive. So, and also it's a little hard to find the students that can commit for 15 days of immersive course. So here I'm trying to make it as accessible as possible, this knowledge for the local people and for also European people. And as you said, I target the people from the cities because I feel that that's where I come from, so I can speak the same language, and I feel more understood. And also I feel that the people in the cities need the permaculture the most, because people in the countryside, they are already practicing a lot of the permaculture principles and ethics unconsciously, but they are less fragile and than the people of the city. And the people of the city also have the capacity to spread permaculture around them. And yeah, I mean, that's why I focus more on sharing my knowledge with my peers, I would say, people who grew up in the city like me.
And so is there, like, in terms of, I don't know how cities are structured, like urban design in Tunisia, but is space a challenge? And I know you're looking at me and you're going to say, you can do it on your windowsill. So I've shot myself in the foot already. I've answered my own question. But how do you get people over that mindset of, I don't have the space for this or the time for this? Or again, this whole kind of, me and my hang up of, if I do this, I need to really understand microbes and phosphates and nitrates and soil composition.
Yeah, actually, I can share with you a story. When I first learned about permaculture, before I do the PDC, the permaculture design course, I decided to make a trip around Tunisia by bicycle. So I started from the capital, Tunis, where I grew up, and then I moved around the whole country, more than 1,000 kilometers in 30 days, in 35 days. And I had a challenge to cook my own food on fire every night. And I had a tent, so to sleep in the tent. And I had the challenge to not produce waste. So in 35 days, I produced like 10 grams of waste because I didn't use any plastic. And also in every place I go, so I was traveling from one farm to another because I wanted to learn about farming. I knew nothing about farming. And in every farm, I was volunteering. I was volunteering to plant or to take care of beehives or to take care of animals and or to harvest dates or to harvest olives. And so I did very, very different activities, or to build these blocks for building. And one of the stops I made was in a permaculture farm. And they had a website, and after I left, they wrote an article about me, and they said the title of the article was "A Permaculturist Without a Garden." And that hooked me to permaculture, because I realized that, permaculture is not about having a garden. It's about applying permaculture principles. So the way I was not producing waste, that made me closer to what a permaculturist is. Or the way I was using renewable energy, when I use a bicycle, I use my muscle energy. The way I cook food for myself, so I'm more autonomous. The way I help others and I volunteer, I share the surplus of energy maybe I have in exchange of a surplus of information, or and the way I make relationships with people. Permaculture is made of principles that are universal. They can be applied everywhere, in the city, in the countryside, even in the Sahara, in the North Pole, in the Antarctic. Anywhere you are, you can apply exactly the same principles, like observe, produce no waste, value diversity, accept feedback and apply auto-regulation, use and value the margins. These are some of the principles that we can apply in all dimensions of our life. And that's the fun part for me, because still people are thinking about it and writing new books about it and sharing new experience about it. And I'm still learning like how to apply these principles in every different context. And it looks very different in every different context.
I found really interesting, right, when you talk about energy and your own energy as an energy resource. So when I think about energetics, it tends to be in the kind of spiritual sense, right? And as you were saying about, I have a surplus of energy and therefore I'm able to volunteer. I've never thought about I think about my fuel tank when I feel, I'm feeling a little bit depleted, or I need a little bit of sunshine, or I need a little bit of, what are the things that nourish me? But I've never thought about myself as the energetic of what I nourish.
Yeah.
Which flips everything around as well, right? Where I put my energy and what the exchange is in that, right? And the richness of that exchange. And so intentionality in what you do feels like a really strong thread. But also like this idea of challenging yourself again, right? So you give yourself the task of, $100 a month, right? To see if you can do it. Whether you needed to do it or not is another matter. But the fact that I want to be able to, and I want to be able to see if I can, and then I'm going to cycle around and I'm not going to produce any waste. There's something about like pushing yourself, not because it's uncomfortable, but it's almost in service of your integrity.
Mm-hmm.
In some way, right? Which, again, it just shows, again, that bit of intentionality, I guess. So I'm not really sure what my question is, but just the observations of like the different threads that lead you in different paths, right? So, and that challenge piece seems interesting as well. Of people say it's really difficult, but is it really? I want to test myself. Where does that come from?
Yeah. Actually, I believe it comes from my pursuit of the edge effect, which is another permaculture principle that I had maybe intuitively before I learned about permaculture. Yeah, to push myself to be in the limit of myself, because in the limit, in the edge, that's where magic happened. That's where I learned the most. That's where about myself and about others and my environment. And so these challenges for me, I felt the responsibility as a young person, as a healthy person, as a free person, like without huge responsibility, to take that opportunity to do these challenges. Because, for me, that's how we learn. When we go to the limit, that's how we grow. When we go to the edge and try to learn new things and interact with people we never interacted with before, and to observe and watch and practice. And and I also constantly think of, the people without privileges, like in places like India, or even our ancestors, the way they used to live. I believe it's more real and more authentic. And also, I remember there was a saying of Alan Watts that impacted me a lot, where he was saying that I would rather have a short life, I think, full of experiences and wandering and learning, and rather than have a long life, but where we do the same. I do the same thing every day. So that really pushed me to try to experience the new thing and live fully every day, and enjoy whatever challenge I can have without putting myself in risk. It's not about adrenaline or something. It's about how to enjoy life and how to appreciate life and everything we might take for granted on a daily basis.
And so what does self-autonomy mean for you now, right? What does, how is that manifesting, given that you've been on the land for a long time? You've been long time, not super long, but tell me a little bit about that and that self-sufficiency and how that's changed, or has it?
Yeah, for me, self-autonomy is an ideal. Like, okay, maybe I can have, let's say, like this is 100% autonomous and this is 0% autonomous. So it's a line. I can measure, and maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I was close to zero. I was like 1% autonomous. So I needed, I didn't cook my food. I didn't grow my food. I remember even to go, like sometimes I go meet friends in a cafe. I use the car to go to the cafe, which is 5 minutes away. So I was very dependent on the system and on others and on the system basically, and on consumption. So for me, autonomy is to get out of that dependence and to go close to autonomy. So the more we learn how to provide our needs for ourselves, we are more autonomous and we are more free. So for me, maybe I was close to zero, and now maybe I'm at around 20 or 30%, but I'm still far from 100% because it's really, really hard and maybe impossible. Because in the end, also, you will still need to be in a community, in a guild of other autonomous people or communities.
And so this whole, so you've been teaching people by helping them practically get their hands into the soil, right? And that kind of learning by doing.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're kind of, you're also, and in your courses you've been talking about permaculture from a design principle perspective, and this principles for life, right? And now you're moving to online, right? So could you talk a little bit about that difference in approach and the soil connection as well as the kind of cerebral connection, and what does this new chapter of sharing your knowledge involve? Like what's that new design course, or is it the same but just without the hands in the soil?
Yeah, it is the same, and the hands of the soil is really one of the components of permaculture design course. I mean, we do that in the permaculture design course to add more, experimental practices in the course where people can touch the soil and enjoy that and appreciate it. But it can happen also in the online course because people, they will get to observe their own environment and practice and what they learn in the course online in their environment if they have the capacity to. But permaculture design course, is really wider than soil is one of the components. It's an important one, but what I like to teach people is how to design using permaculture principles, how to design anything. That's what the most interesting for me. And also like to do regenerative design and also to understand natural systems. And in the last years, I was more and more involved in the online communities of the regenerative movements. And I realized that more and more people, of course, are joining this movement. But there is a good portion of people who they follow this movement by heart and by feeling and by intuition, but without much understanding of natural systems. And I believe permaculture design course is one of the best tools to help us do that, to help us understand natural systems, how it functions, and how to design regenerative and resilient system. And making it online makes it accessible. So I would encourage everyone to do the permaculture design course on site because it's an immersive experience and it's maybe more real. But the people who don't have that privilege or that to be able to go on site, I wanted to make it accessible through this online course. And also the specificity of the course I will be hosting is it is within the Design School for Regenerating Earth, which is now a growing community of more than 300 people from all over the world who are working together and co-learning how to regenerate Earth, how to regenerate bioregions, and through bioregion regeneration, regenerating the whole planet. So within this community, I wanted to share this course, and so at the same time we will be talking permaculture, but also within an environment of very interesting people from many countries who are passionate about earth regeneration, which makes it very special course. So I'm very excited.
And I'm interested, like that linkages with regeneration, right? Because we haven't actually shared that we met in class, and we've been on this course for a year. But the reading that I've done maybe in the last month, it feels like the permaculture principles and the ethic feel like the foundation that's needed when we think about regenerative systems. I don't think you can have regenerative systems that aren't embedded with some understanding of those principles. And they aren't explained. I'm going to get myself into so much trouble for saying, but it doesn't feel like it's as unified or as succinctly put in the regenerative space at the moment, whereby like I'm having conversations about regenerative agriculture, but that completely disregard the socioeconomic or the self, right? Whether it's an organization, like a business. And so some of the work that I've been doing is and the conversations I've been having is about how do we incorporate a very holistic lens of regeneration beyond the soil, right? Because the whole ecosystem involves people. It involves, like, there's no fair share.
Yeah.
In how people are talking about regenerative agriculture. And it feels detached, like regenerative agriculture is something that happens over there. It's like organic, like these are regeneratively grown carrots. And it's like, if the system isn't regenerative, then I don't think you could call them regeneratively grown carrots. Does that make sense? And so to me, as I've been kind of exploring, it feels like having this solid grounding in a belief system, but also the practicalities of the 12 principles. It feels more solid to me. And I think I'm kind of connecting dots in the regenerative space much better for having done that, or having a little bit of that understanding. I mean, I've got a long way to go to understand the 12 principles deeply, or for them to show up consciously. But does that feel like for you, like after like doing this course for a year, where it's the permaculture base is actually the solidity in all of this? That's just my reflection from the last month.
The regenerative entrepreneurship course?
Yeah, just it feels like the permaculture is the basis for all of it.
Yes, I mean, that's what I feel. It is the basis. And I mean, when you type on Google permaculture definition, you will find many definitions. There is no one definition. But one of them is, permaculture is a holistic design science that creates like I would say a regenerative environment for humans, so that is useful for humans. It's holistic, and it doesn't necessarily need say that it's about. So in the first book of Permaculture 1, they were talking about permanent agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
But then the founders of permaculture, they quickly realized that, agriculture is actually linked to to everything, like to education, to health, to energy, to biodiversity, and economy, social life. So in the next books, they were talking about permanent culture, not permanent agriculture anymore. And permanent culture, makes it not only wider than just agriculture, but also agriculture itself maybe it's not that relevant, because humans lived on Earth 90% of life without agriculture. I mean, agriculture is a new thing, and it's possible to live regeneratively without even agriculture. If we just learn how to help nature make abundance, and how to care for nature and preserve it and understand it, and then nature will become a paradise again, as it was. And we learn how to live together in harmony with nature. That would be the first step. And then, so it's not about agriculture, and it can go beyond agriculture. But then, whatever practice we already have now, like agriculture or industry or trade, actually permaculture principles help us think how to do that in a sustainable way, in a regenerative way. And that's a challenge, actually. But it tells us also about our capacity as a human being to regenerate Earth around us, and through design. So when we do a regenerative design, we learn actually humans are capable of regenerating Earth very quickly, as we saw in many projects around the world, like in India, in Kenya, in Europe, in North America. Humans have the capacity to regenerate the landscapes around them and to regenerate communities, and that's a superpower we have. and to do it fast. So yeah, how to spread this knowledge and how to bring more people to do it, as it should be number one priority now. How to regenerate in the context of today, of poly crisis everywhere. The humanity need to start putting all its energy in regenerating the earth, and permaculture is one of the best guidelines we have now to be able to do that.
It feels really big, right? You talk about polycrisis and you talk about fragile systems within cities, and we're not even very nice to each other, right? Let alone that bigger concept of showing up in service of each other and the planet, which is where I think this mindset shift of that, it's where self-autonomy or self-reliance and self-sufficiency becomes kind of a sexy concept, right? Of even if you do it for those reasons, it's better than not doing anything at all. But I was going to ask you as a final question, what gives you hope? Because there is this doom and gloom element of the container that we're kind of living in, and spreading the word and demystifying permaculture, right? Which is what you've done for me in so many ways, which I'm massively grateful for. There is this, it's doable, it's obtainable, it's small. Gives me some courage and hope. But what for you is, what's your hope point right now?
Yeah, for me, what gives me hope is our capacity to regenerate ourselves and our environment, just like nature does. When we observe nature, we see huge capacity of regeneration, and we can learn that, we observe that, how nature does that, and replicate it at different contexts, different scales, different approaches, but there is an opportunity to regenerate the earth and to accept collapse also as a natural pattern necessary for regeneration also. My hope is that humanity will be able to build a regenerative civilization that can last for thousands or hundreds of thousands of years more on an earth that looks more like a paradise than what American movies try to picture us, like living in middle of machines and a destroyed planet. I think that's not the only option we have. We have the option for humans to be in total harmony with nature and to heal it and heal ourselves again. And to have this permanent civilization. What else?
But do you think then, right? I was just thinking that if you look at COP or all these kind of global summits, right? It feels like they're just focusing on the wrong stuff, though. You can talk about carbon and you can talk about, it feels really misguided.
Yeah.
When you're like, yes, welcome to my world, Deepa. But I know it's misguided, but the way that you just said that, it feels achievable, and realistic, and solution centric. rather than and hopeful, rather than some of the narratives and some of the stories. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Adda with super inspiring Elyes Mkacher. Places. The Adda is brought to you by the Deep and Meaningful Consultancy, and the production is managed by Luka, and our music is from the song Unreasonable World by the phenomenally talented Bernard Schimpelsberger. To find out more about the Deep and Meaningful Consultancy, to sign up for our monthly newsletter, and also check out our group Adda sessions where we host small spaces for big, messy topics, please check out www.deepandmeaningful.co.
Wrong, I would say.
We'll see you next time.
So I have no much to expect from this system. I believe we need to design a new system that makes the current one obsolete, and it needs to be built on natural patterns, like by regions, for example, and how to regenerate landscapes and how to observe and understand natural systems. So that's not happening in this kind of event and COPs, and it's almost for me like how to say, comedy, for communication and a game of power, and but in the other side there are people, David Holmgren and Bill Mollison. They believe a lot in I forgot the words, but bottom up change.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that happening more and more. More coherence is built along activists and permaculturists and regenerative leaders around the world to build capacity to lead this change to regenerative civilization, and that gives me hope. I just want to do my part in that and invite everyone to join.
I love the fact that I watched this video of David Holmgren, and he is like, it's a revolution and we're having more fun anyway, so come and join us.
Yes, it's much more fun. I agree with that.
Yeah. So that's a beautiful place for us to come to a close, because I think it is way more fun. And so, I'm going to thank you so much for your time. Gosh, and just looking at the time, I didn't realize where we'd got to. So thank you so much.
Every second of this conversation,
I feel like I grow and I learn so much from us talking to each other. And the point of these conversations is to have that kind of different perspective, right? And then by having solid conversations, maybe we can show up a bit better as well. So I'm going to start small is my goal for today. So thank you so much for your time, and we will put links to your TED Talk, and we will put links to your organization and the links to the course, which I'm going to sign up for, because it's the foundation of life, clearly. So, thrilled. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Adda with super inspiring Elyes Mkacher. The Adda is brought to you by the Deep and Meaningful Consultancy. Production is managed by Luka, and our music is from the song Unreasonable World by the phenomenally talented Bernard Schimpelsberger. To find out more about the Deep and Meaningful Consultancy, to sign up for our monthly newsletter, and also check out our group Adda sessions where we host small spaces for big, messy topics, please check out www.deepandmeaningful.co. We'll see you next time.